Hi, I'm Alec from EasierHabits.com, and I coach working parents in how to design their ideal lives. And I'm really excited this week because my wife Meg and I have been piloting a new seminar, a couples seminar for lifestyle design. Basically, there are a lot of resources that tell you how to improve yourself as an individual. And there's a lot of couple books that talk about working on the relationship and communication techniques. But we're kind of interested in the overlap between that, how you can work towards being your ideal self, but get support from your partner and support them in also being their ideal selves, not just working on your relationship, but enjoying who you are as an individual and working with your partner to hone that. And we've been getting some good feedback. We have very simple, straightforward exercises, easy to apply, designed to get you from feeling stuck to communicating and getting a sense of momentum and movement. And so we're really excited to be working on that. If this is the kind of content you are interested in, you can go ahead and check out the link below. That leads to an email form where you can join our email list and hear about opportunities. When we're piloting a new program, we might offer stuff for free. And of course, we will, if you're on the email list, we'll announce when our offerings go to the general public so you can be the first to sign up. So I had a friend this week forward me an article about Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, breaking gender stereotypes by putting her career ahead of his as second gentleman. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this article. It dovetails the subject matter dovetails very neatly in with lifestyle design. But the take of this particular USA Today article is a little bit more on the gender norms and a lot of big symbolic gestures, which are actually not very good for lifestyle design. So I'll talk a little bit about norms and how they affect you as you're starting a relationship or looking for a relationship, how they affect your decision in a relationship, and why ultimately what you want to meet your needs and support your spouse in best meeting their needs is not gender stereotypes or norms or symbolic gestures, but lifestyle design, being very conscious of what you need, having the communication skills to be able to explain that to your wife or husband, and also being able to listen and support them as they articulate their needs, and figuring out how to make little changes that will build up over time to create an ideal life for the both of you. So I've highlighted this article. The yellow and blue highlights are me, not the article, and I'll just pick out some of the key parts that stood out to me. So right off the bat, we're not even quoting Doug Emhoff. We're quoting a Dartmouth College professor of business administration. And she says, Mr. Harris, and it's interesting. So immediately she's framing this. The article calls him Doug Emhoff. I assume that's what he goes by normally. And this is a professor who immediately is defining him in terms of his relationship to his wife. And then that is how most of us will know him. I didn't know the name Doug Emhoff before, but it's very interesting that's a cast, right? That is the perspective of the article, that not really focused on his perspective, but focused on how he relates to his wife, and that's what's interesting to this professor. And so it says, Mr. Harris is totally comfortable stepping back so his wife can show her brilliance, grace, grit, and power because he wants her to succeed. And this is framed as pretty much like a win-lose situation. In order for Kamala Harris to be the vice president, he needs to step down from his job as a entertainment. It says a successful private attorney, and I believe elsewhere it might mention an entertainment attorney. He has to step down from that in order to let his wife have the career that she wants, right? And I don't necessarily buy into that. And then in the blue, let's see, it says that what's more, this is the writer of the article, kind of opining, a successful private attorney from a corporate world where white men like him often take the lead. He's stepping back to support the nation's first Black and South Asian woman vice president. So that's a handful. Again, this is taking a very external symbolic view of like what this means. But I will say before we dive into norms any further that um, this is really a terrible way to make decisions as an actual individual couple. So like if you're trying to decide what to do in your life, don't do anything for your wife because she's going to be the nation's first Black South Asian woman anything, right? You want to make decisions for your spouse, your partner, based on what they articulate their needs as being, right? And that might be shaped by their background and their experience as someone of a particular background, but that is not necessarily the same thing as like assuming because she's a woman or because he's a dude, he's gonna want this or that, or because they're of a certain background, this is how they're gonna act, right? You want to respond to people's consciously spoken needs, and there might be communication skills where you can help them articulate that if that is something that's difficult for them. But if you start making assumptions based on demographics, why anyone would be doing anything, I mean that's not a good relationship for a partnership of any sort, whether it's romantic, business, or whatever. Another professor or a director says his position is going to be extremely visible and his behavior is going to send a message. And it's still kind of looking at it as he's a symbol or a figurehead. But in this language, it starts talking a little bit more about why Doug Emhoff might actually benefit from making the decision that he is, i.e., he's going to have a visibility he didn't have before. The first actual quote from Doug Emhoff in his article is, "Everyone's got an opinion on this, which is nice to hear," very politic, which means people are actually excited about the prospect of someone like me in this role, and I get that. So someone saying I get that is usually someone saying that's not my perspective, but I understand why it is someone else's. And so the first quote we have in this article that's celebrating his stepping back as second man is just like, I get that you're excited about that. And so that at least says to me he might actually be a more private person. He certainly could phrase that without sounding insulting, but it's just kind of interesting. We have this article on the important symbolics of him as a second gentleman, and he is he's kind of distancing himself from all of this excitement a little bit. And so maybe we'll get down a little bit further into what he says he will do or what's in it for him in the article. Here's kind of the meat of the article for people, regular people who aren't second gentlemen, who are facing career trade-offs in Corona. And it talks about how 865,000 women have exited the labor force when compared with 216 men. And talking about how even women who remained employed were more than 3 times as likely as their male partners to be handling the bulk of household and childcare duties. So this is about norms, and I think this is kind of phrased as a negative, and it may or may not be depending on the couple. And this is kind of where I want to dive into what norms are and why they are kind of a terrible way to gauge your personal life. These are great for like talking heads and pundits, but in deciding what you want to do with your life, it's going to be driven by your needs and your values, as well as your partner's needs and your partner's values, and the conversation you have to maximize both of those things as much as you can. There will be trade-offs, but this norm of men doing more work, women taking more of the chores and the childcare activities, whether that's a good thing or bad thing depends on whether those things align with your values or not. Tony Robbins has this great story. He'll ask some random people like, all right, how much does cleaning on a scale of 1 to 10 align with your personal values? Most people give it a 1. But he says in any room, there will be people who say like cleaning the house aligns 10 out of 10 with their personal values. And and there are ways you can dig into that. When he digs into that, the examples he gives are a person might enjoy it as service to other people, so it's meaningful. It might be a time of learning and growth for them because they listen to audiobooks or something like that. It can be, that time, depending on what your values are and how you build them into the activity, like can actually be meaningful, even though for most people, self included, cleaning is not a super meaningful activity. And so that just goes to say, like, there are norms. They work for some people, they don't work for some people. Seeing basically the second gentleman day in and day out over the next 4 years is going to normalize this version of a relationship, that version of relationship being, a female breadwinner. That is a norm, but it's not necessarily better or worse than the norm of having a male breadwinner, right? It's going to work for, having a male breadwinner is going to work for couples where the woman sees what primarily aligns with her values as being in the home or being taking care of kids, and with men who want to be providers. Now, I've talked to couples who are the reverse, who take a look at their career skills and their values and decide the wife is going to be the one that works and the man is going to raise the kids, and they tweak that to work how the best they can. There are couples that both work, and that comes with its own challenges. So you both get to exercise your careers. You both see your kids less. You're going to have less time together because when you are home, you're both going to be doing more chores around the house. And who knows, there's, maybe sometime in the future where we all have UBI and some utopia, there'll be a norm of nobody working. And that would come with its own, its own challenges. People who retire are much more likely to get sick, which implies that there's like physical stressful conditions that happen when you don't have like the regular challenge of work. So whatever the norms are, there's going to be challenges with them, even if they work for you or you fit the norm, and nobody's going to fit all the norms. So like this is not really a helpful way to make decisions as a couple. And what you want to be aware of with norms is that, one, if you're looking to get into a serious relationship, you want to see, you don't want to just assume the norm, and you want to have a conversation with people about what their expectations of an ideal relationship looks like. And that's going to change. So when my wife and I got married, she was thinking about being a stay-at-home mom. And we had our first kid, and she loved him. She was terrified. I was terrified, actually, as a new parent. And over the course of a couple years and having another kid, she realized that she wanted more structure in her life, and there are just ways in which there are aspects of the chaos of children that I am much more amenable to creating order in chaotic situations, where my wife is much more amenable to working within a structured environment and kind of like tweaking that and pushing that forward. And so there were different goals. And so for a period of time, especially when the kids were really little, I actually was a primary caretaker, and my wife was running a school in Japan. And so that was an adaptation, because even according to your best understandings, your values may change, or especially if you're potentially looking for a serious relationship and talking about kids, if you haven't had kids, you don't know what that's going to be like, and there will be some unexpected changes in when you have kids. So you want to have those conversations as you're starting up a serious relationship. You want to have those conversations regularly as a couple. How is this situation working for you? And you want, as an individual within a relationship, to actually really articulate what it is you need and why. Like, journal about that. Really dive deep into what you feel is missing in your life, what you feel is important, what makes you feel proud and accomplished, what energizes you. Like, dig deep into those things and keep asking yourself, why this, why that? Because a lot of times when people look into their needs, they might think of career. And in fact, I had someone I was talking to who's asking me how to have a priority conversation with his wife about like career versus family. I said, first of all, either of those is a terrible priority, right? Because they're too general. A career is a lot of things. A career is a source of income. It's a social network. It is a source of growth and advancement. It is a way to contribute to the broader world. and even those things could be broken down. If it's a source of income, and income for what? Why do you need this income? How much do you need? Is this for saving? Is this for living a certain lifestyle? Is this for buying your first home, etc.? And being honest with yourself about why you need what you need allows you then to come to your partner to have an honest conversation, and to have one that just doesn't go in circles, right? A lot of times, if people don't really define what they need, they just feel their needs aren't going to be met. That's when you're going to talk in circles around each other a lot and have a lot of frustration. So, back to this article, it's describing common patterns. And what we don't know is whether that works for people or not. We don't know whether they're having the conversations behind this. Even people who end up making sacrifices, do they believe, even if it's a sacrifice, is that the best thing they could have done? And they're happy with the overall choice, knowing it's the best one that could be made, yeah, even if there are some trade-offs. So this actually finally goes into Doug Emhoff talking at a recent fundraiser, and so you get a little bit more of his perspective, individual reasons on why he might be doing one thing or the other. It's just snippets, but it says Doug Emhoff is talking about how he wants to focus on access to justice, and how he was shocked as a young lawyer going to Los Angeles Superior Court by all the people lining the halls in need of legal help. So especially if he's been an entertainment lawyer, he probably has not been doing a whole lot of justice stuff, unless he's like doing pro bono cases for like creators that are being taken advantage of, predatory contracts, or protecting kid actors or something like that, right? You're probably not doing a lot of justice there. And so while a lot of the article has framed this as his versus hers career as a whole, when you actually get down into what it is he values, this might be a step forward for him, right? Maybe access to justice is a topic that he feels he hasn't really addressed in his career. And since Kamala Harris's career is taking forward, he can focus less on money and more on this access to justice piece. And so he might view this actually, instead of as a step backward, a step forward into being free to live more of his values and not worrying about being the breadwinner. And also he might look at it as a step forward, again, for the visibility mentioned above. The article is kind of concerned with his visibility as a symbol, but from his perspective, making this individual decision and weighting the trade-offs, then he might find that this is a step forward, right? It's not a win-lose situation. It can be a win-win. And really, the best way you can support your wife or husband or spouse or partner is not just taking a backseat while they drive, because putting your life on hold, even one, it might make you more likely to resent your partner, but two, even if you don't resent your partner, if your partner's learning and growing and you're not, your partner isn't going to feel good about that, even if you're comfortable with the status quo. If you want to support your partner in a career change, for example, you want to see what the opportunities are for you in this. If you have to move for the career change, what are the new opportunities you're going to have in a new place? If that career change gives the both of you access to different people or different skill sets, or different social circles, is there value in that? Or if your partner is taking on this career, is there a way that you can, if you're stepping back from your career, is there a way that you can arrange between the two of you some time for you to work on whatever it is you're passionate? So when my wife was running the school in Japan, I negotiated with her a couple of hours, normally during nap time or when my kids stopped taking naps, where they could kind of play with the high schoolers at the school, where I would be able to practice coding and do my entrepreneurship thing. And that gave me a sense of purpose. I learned a lot. I also learned it's really hard to be an entrepreneur and start your own company. But I learned a lot in that time period when we realized Japan didn't work out for us as a family, because it was hard to get kids in school and get them a social environment that we wanted for them. We realized that we'd had to come back, but I think I had a job offer within a week of moving back to the States, because I'd kept up my skills during this time. And so I didn't put my life on pause because I was primarily a stay-at-home dad in the remote mountains of Japan. I tried to figure out ways to move forward with my life. And that was really important. So one thing that confused me before we made this big career change with my wife was that I was encouraging her to take this position, and I found a place in my career where it was kind of clear the company I was at the time was not really going to move forward a lot in the next year or two. And eventually, I think they liquidated entirely their engineering department. And so it was a good time for me to make a change. And I told her, hey, you've got this school thing brewing on the horizon. If we ever want to make this happen, this might be the best time. And so I was encouraging her to do that. And one of her responses that just completely threw me was she was worried that I would resent her for making this change. And so I had to explain, I don't know if Japan's going to work for me, and I don't know, how long it'll work out, but we should try it and see. And there were definitely some speed bumps when we got there. I could barely breathe in our apartment, and I had to figure out how to deal with crazy allergies in Japan. And I'd been in Japan before. I knew I was generally more allergic, but it had never been serious like that. And so, there were adjustments that I made. But what I realized is when you come to these big career decisions where the outcome of that decision will take both of you into a very different space, what I realized is more important than that big decision are the little daily decisions that you make as a couple to support each other. And so Meg at that time didn't have quite the trust that we could, make it work or do our best. And it was the daily seeing me take care of the kids and try and find ways that they could have fun and get outside and occasionally meet other kids. And me seeing her help me engineer some time to keep up my coding and entrepreneurship skills. And so that daily bit, I guess weekly kind of trade off every week, trying to figure out how we could do things just a little bit better to accommodate each other. That is what really built trust, rather than one big symbolic gesture of like stepping back from a career. And so as you're thinking about this, if you're in a relationship and you're at currently a career changing or otherwise life changing decision between the two of you, know that it's not really that decision, but how you iterate afterwards, how you check in every week and tweak things to support each other. That's really going to build the trust and make you grow out of that relationship. As big as these decisions seem, they're actually less important than the weekly process of changing your life a little bit at a time to accommodate each other, because they don't build up trust, right? You can't build up in one decision the amount of trust you can of constant effort over a year. Even if that decision will impact you guys for years, you kind of emotionally move on fairly quickly after big decisions. And then it's how your life is day to day that will really determine how you feel about yourselves and each other. This whole article is just about the big decision, the stepping back. It doesn't really give us any look into Kamala Harris's and Doug Emhoff's day to day, how they do trade-offs, how they build that trust as a couple. But that is like the critical lifestyle design piece. All right, and so the last thing is a quote from him. There was an Ask Me Anything or Ask a Grown-Up session, and where a kid asked him what he would do if Mrs. Harris was chosen as the vice president, and he replied, well, first I'd say, yay, and then I'm going to do what I always do, Atticus. I'm going to support her because it's really important for men and even young boys to support the strong and wonderful woman in their lives. And I'm going to do that. I hope that you do too. So yes, that's a great message. I would add to that kind of just a reminder of what I'd said before, that the best way to support someone when you make these kinds of trade-offs is not to just sacrifice for your partner. The best way you can support your partner is to find the opportunities for yourself so that you grow along with your partner. If you choose somehow to, alter your career path to accommodate your partner. Again, I'm trying to step away from the phrasing of this is a win-lose. You're stepping down from your career so your partner can have a career. I don't think it has to be phrased that way. Like, this can be an opportunity, like we talked above with the justice, if you check in with your values. Recently, actually, at the seminar I was talking about earlier when we were testing it, I got a great question, which is, what do you do when there's a decision that seems to be, win-lose, where there's no way you can resolve it happily for the both of you? And this was a great decision, and the answer was just make it a little bit better for both of you. Whether you decide, party A or party B wins, and you have to go with the big strategy that works for them, or the strategy that plays into their life or is easier for them, or whatever it is, whichever option you decide, if you feel like there's only two options, constantly look for a way to make it a little bit better, especially for the person who seems to be making the sacrifice, or is having a hard time with this decision and this change. If you do that, there's three things that happen. One, their life slowly gets better over time. Two, as you make little changes to make things better, you might find ways that you might find more and more things to make this a little bit better, and you might get to a phase where you realize, looking back through all of these small steps and solutions, that you've actually managed to solve the problem in hindsight a little bit at a time. So even if you don't know how to solve it all now, just keep making it better, and you might find that it actually works out. And the last is thing that happens when you focus on making it better, especially for the person who has to do more change or more accommodating, is that you start to build trust, right? Even if they had to sacrifice, they see you daily, weekly, making changes to your life that support them. And more important in many cases than the specific big decision that needs to be made is the sense that I have a spouse that values me and is working for me to have the best life that I can. And that speaks volumes. In the end, even though Japan was really challenging for me, for a number of reasons, I didn't speak Japanese as well as Meg. It didn't align directly with my career path. And I felt like socially isolated, because even if I'd spoken really good Japanese, we were in remote mountains. There weren't a whole lot of people to talk to. So it wasn't really challenge. It was a big challenge for me. But that actually was never why we went back. And so my wife's like day-to-day effort to accommodate me, to figure out fun things that we could do. She had the students at the school start preparing meals, and they invited me over. So I didn't have to worry about cooking as a stay-at-home dad, which was kind of amazing. And having home-cooked Japanese meals every evening, like, that was a remarkable piece of the experience. Ultimately, I came into like a brick wall where I was worried that we weren't really able to give our kids enough social experiences, especially in the remote mountain town. I couldn't get them into preschool, and they were having a hard time. And I wanted to make sure at very young age, where the oldest was, I think he was 2 and 3 during this time, and then turned 4 right afterwards. I think during that time period, it's critical for social development. So I didn't really want to kneecap him by, living in a remote mountain village where he doesn't speak the language. We did some trying to teach him, and he wasn't that receptive, and there weren't a lot of kids to talk to anyway. We had to travel to another town to see any kids his age. And so, all of that was the reason why we came back. But kind of bring that full circle with the big decision. The big decision was a challenge. On the other hand, the day-to-day working through it and seeing my wife help me optimize for the best solution I had, the best life I could live there, was enough to keep me there, right? And eventually, neither of us could figure out how to then optimize in this situation for the kids. And that eventually brought us back to the States, where we could get them in preschools, where they could have more friends, more social interactions, and kind of learn those important social skills at a young age. So there you have it. So you're going to see a lot of stuff in the news about things couples do, high-power couples do, rich, famous couples do. Most of them are too high level to be really useful to you in a lifestyle design perspective, if you want to find a model for decisions, at least find an interview with the people where they're talking about where someone's asking them about their questions and why they're making the decisions that they're making, and then you'll get a little bit more of the trade-offs. Articles like this are about norms, but norms are never the best way to live your life. They're just the default. So you can be aware that if you don't actually take the time to think about what it is you really need as an individual on a very specific level, then probably you and your spouse will be following certain defaults. And that might be, the defaults of the country at large. It might be the defaults of your particular family. But if you feel stuck in your life, chances are it's just because you've been taking the default options that are offered to you by your employer, by your family, by society. So take the time out to figure out what you need, communicate it with your spouse, and then go ahead and make small adjustments on a week-to-week basis to support each other, and that will put you in a place where you can make these big decisions without making it a win-lose situation, and where you can try and meet both parties' needs in a way versus kind of, as you see with these professors of business, treating this decision as a win-lose situation, right? Like you wouldn't want these people as your career mentors. They're saying, oh, what you should do is you should just like forget your career and support your spouse. That's terrible advice, right? You should look at what it is you want to accomplish with your life, what it is you enjoy, and be able to communicate with that spouse, and whatever options you go, whatever career, wherever you move to, maximize those for each of you and support your spouse. Dedicate some time regularly to either helping your spouse with what's important to them or freeing up time for them so they can spend more time on those things. Anyway, that is a long commentary. Let me know if you've had any insights from your own big decisions with partners, and just throw that down in the comments and let us know what works for you, how you make these big decisions. Also, if you're interested in this content and you want more of it, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons to get more. And if you know anybody who's struggling with career trade-offs right now, maybe send them the link to this video and share it out. Certainly COVID has hit a lot of people, and balancing career and family obligations is really challenging. So best of luck if you're dealing with that. But until next week, make big changes one small habit at a time.